Have you ever felt that unsettling chill when something just doesn't add up? In a world where every moment is captured, filtered, and broadcast for an audience hungry for authenticity, it's easy to overlook the undercurrents of doubt. Yet there are times when even the most meticulously curated images feel as if they're hiding a secret, a truth waiting to be uncovered. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most talked about mysteries of recent years: the controversial narrative surrounding Meghan Markle's pregnancies. For years, the public has been treated to a series of polished images and carefully constructed stories, a journey meant to encapsulate the very essence of modern motherhood. Yet, behind the glossy facades and artfully captured moments, an almost imperceptible dissonance has lingered. There was always something strangely off about the way those baby bump angles were shot, the way each photograph seemed to tell not just a story of life and love, but one of calculated precision. It wasn't that the images lacked beauty or emotion. In fact, they dazzled the public. But as time passed, the murmurs of doubt grew louder. There was an undercurrent that suggested what we saw might have been less about natural affection and more about staged performance. At the core of these hushed discussions is a simple yet potent question. What if the story behind those images was not as organic as it appeared? In hushed online forums and late-night social media debates, critics began to dissect every angle, every smile, each fleeting touch, as if they were clues in a cinematic puzzle. Observers noted that the same repeated angles and controlled poses weren't the random artifacts of a natural process. They were deliberate choices, selections made to craft an image rather than capture a moment. When the public looks at a series of images that feel too perfect, the mind can't help but wonder, were we witnessing a genuine celebration of life or a meticulously orchestrated performance designed for maximum appeal? As these early suspicions simmered quietly, a dramatic turning point began to emerge. Rumors, once confined to the margins of celebrity gossip, escalated when whispers surfaced that someone intimately connected to the narrative was nearing a breaking point, a person who might finally step forward to put all the pieces on the table. Imagine the shock. After years of silence, an alleged insider hints that what the public consumed as an authentic experience was, in fact, something entirely manufactured. These aren't the idle musings of conspiracy theorists. They're hints coming from deep within a system that thrives on image management. The possibility that the very heartbeat of Meghan and Harry's narrative might be based on a staged event has electrified social media, causing old doubts to resurface with renewed intensity. There's something almost poetic about the contrast between what we expect from a raw, authentic experience and what we're served up as a blockbuster narrative crafted for the cameras. On one hand, motherhood is meant to be tender and unpredictable, filled with spontaneous moments that can never be rehearsed. On the other hand, in a world where every detail can be polished to perfection, natural moments risk being lost in the pursuit of a flawless brand image. This duality strikes at the heart of our desire for truth. When you see a moment that appears too perfect, it provokes a dual sensation: admiration for its beauty, yet a nagging suspicion that the story might be too well scripted to be real. The implications of a potential fabrication go far beyond a single scandal or a set of controversial photos. When the architect of one's public persona is revealed to have possibly manipulated a milestone as personal as pregnancy, it shakes the very foundation of trust. Celebrities, especially those in the royal orbit, are expected to share not just their triumphs but the most intimate truths of their lives. Their journeys, often marketed as expressions of vulnerability and resilience, become their currency in a world that prizes authenticity. So when even a single element of that narrative is called into question, it doesn't just diminish a moment. It challenges the entire relationship between a public figure and their audience. Many begin to wonder, if the story of their most sacred moments is fabricated, what else might be part of the grand performance? This is where the ripple effects become impossible to ignore. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry carefully constructed their brand as a counterpoint to the rigid, time-worn traditions of the royal institution. A narrative built on the promise of honesty, reinvention, and the courage to defy expectation. Yet, this promise now stands on precarious ground. If the pregnancy narrative was anything less than authentic, it not only damages the couple's credibility, but also undermines the very notion that they reclaimed their destiny by walking away from royal constraints. The royal machinery, with all its historical majesty and meticulously managed appearances, is suddenly confronted with a modern dilemma. How do you preserve legitimacy when every carefully controlled personal moment is subject to relentless scrutiny? There's something almost poetic about the contrast between what we expect from a raw, authentic experience and what we're served up as a blockbuster narrative crafted for the cameras. On one hand, motherhood is meant to be tender and unpredictable, filled with spontaneous moments that can never be rehearsed. On the other hand, in a world where every detail can be polished to perfection, natural moments risk being lost in the pursuit of a flawless brand image. This duality strikes at the heart of our desire for truth. When you see a moment that appears too perfect, it provokes a dual sensation: admiration for its beauty, yet a nagging suspicion that the story might be too well scripted to be real. The implications of a potential fabrication go far beyond a single scandal or a set of controversial photos. When the architect of one's public persona is revealed to have possibly manipulated a milestone as personal as pregnancy, it shakes the very foundation of trust. Celebrities, especially those in the royal orbit, are expected to share not just their triumphs but the most intimate truths of their lives. Their journeys, often marketed as expressions of vulnerability and resilience, become their currency in a world that prizes authenticity. So when even a single element of that narrative is called into question, it doesn't just diminish a moment. It challenges the entire relationship between a public figure and their audience. Many begin to wonder, if the story of their most sacred moments is fabricated, what else might be part of the grand performance? This is where the ripple effects become impossible to ignore. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry carefully constructed their brand as a counterpoint to the rigid, time-worn traditions of the royal institution. A narrative built on the promise of honesty, reinvention, and the courage to defy expectation. Yet, this promise now stands on precarious ground. If the pregnancy narrative was anything less than authentic, it not only damages the couple's credibility, but also undermines the very notion that they reclaimed their destiny by walking away from royal constraints. The royal machinery, with all its historical majesty and meticulously managed appearances, is suddenly confronted with a modern dilemma. How do you preserve legitimacy when every carefully controlled personal moment is subject to relentless scrutiny? In today's media landscape, where every detail is magnified and the smallest inconsistency can ignite a wildfire of speculation, the digital storm surrounding these rumors has only intensified. Social media users armed with smartphones and a penchant for close analysis have turned ordinary photographs into forensic puzzles. A baby bump caught at an unusual angle becomes evidence. A fleeting smile, when examined frame by frame, morphs into a talking point of inconsistency. Screenshots of interviews, slowed down videos, and even the minutiae of fabric and posture are now fodder for endless debate. The internet, in its relentless quest for truth and sensationalism, transforms every once-over look into an argument in a digital coliseum where victory is measured in likes, shares, and viral hashtags. Adding fuel to this already blazing fire is the growing silence from those most expected to address the issue directly. While a supposed insider tip hints at revelations from someone intimately acquainted with the behind-the-scenes maneuvers, Meghan and Harry have maintained a notable quiet. In an era when responding to scandal is almost a necessity to maintain trust, their silence speaks volumes. It's as if every unanswered question, every missing detail is a tacit admission that the narrative was too carefully constructed to allow for spontaneous truth. Legal advisors, tight-lipped spokespeople, and spotless PR teams work diligently behind closed doors, ensuring that the orchestrated image remains intact, all while the digital realm roars with demands for genuine answers. Yet, even as the critics press for accountability, one must pause to consider the broader picture. In the high-stakes game of celebrity branding, there's an inherent tension between crafting an appealing narrative and embracing the messy, often contradictory nature of real life. The drive to control one's image can be both a form of liberation and a gilded cage. For Meghan, whose journey into motherhood was heralded as a triumph of resilience and reinvention, every intimate moment became a line in a story meant to affirm not only her personal growth, but also her breaking away from an oppressive royal past. And in that transformation, the line between genuine vulnerability and strategically placed performance can blur, sometimes to the point where critics argue that nothing remains authentic. Consider the paradox. A real-life pregnancy is one of the most intimate, unpredictable experiences a person can have. Yet when every wrinkle of emotion, every curve of a baby bump is lens-ready and rehearsed, the spontaneity that once held such raw beauty is lost. Instead, what emerges is a highly polished narrative that seems tailor-made for the digital age. This selective display of life's most significant moments becomes not a tribute to reality, but a carefully directed performance, a performance so slick that any deviation from the script is bound to be scrutinized and ultimately questioned. As the narrative unfolds, the repercussions extend beyond the personal realm to touch upon the integrity of a long-standing institution. The royal family has always depended on the public's unwavering trust, a trust that is meticulously nurtured through generations of controlled imagery, measured appearances, and crafted symbolism. But when that trust is threatened by any indication that even one facet of a personal narrative might be a fabrication, the shockwaves can extend far beyond the individuals involved. It becomes a challenge to the entire edifice of public relations upon which modern royalty rests, a challenge that forces us to reckon with the possibility that even the most cherished icons are not immune to the compromises of public life. Now let's step back and survey the digital battleground that has emerged in the wake of these revelations. Online forums, social media platforms, and comment sections have all become arenas where truth is dissected and reassembled. With every pixel and every frame, whether it's a stretched-out screenshot of a maternity photo or a slow-motion analysis of a fleeting expression, netizens engage in a collective act of scrutiny that borders on the obsessive. It is in this environment that a single detail, a peculiar curve of a bump, an incongruity in a photograph, can trigger a cascade of theories and debates. The power of the internet lies not just in its ability to disseminate information quickly, but in its capacity to transform ambiguity into what feels like undeniable evidence. And amid all of this, there is a deeper, unspoken reckoning. The silence from Meghan and Harry, the deliberate reticence from their camp, looms as perhaps the most damning detail of all. In an age where transparency is the norm, a prolonged absence of a clear response is almost as powerful as a confession. It propels theories forward and deepens the sense of mystery, inviting everyone to play detective in a narrative that appears too complex to have been accidental. The layers of legal caution, NDAs, closed-door meetings, and carefully worded press releases add yet another dimension to an already intricate story. Each layer reinforces the notion that when money, reputation, and legacy are at stake, even the most personal aspects of life are subject to an elaborate game of image crafting. At its heart, this whole saga is a modern parable about the cost of authenticity. In a world where every cherished moment is potentially filtered, edited, and repackaged, the very notion of truth becomes fragmented. For a couple that built its legacy on a promise of honesty and reinvention, the stakes could not be higher. Every smile, every carefully curated image of a burgeoning family is a deliberately placed brick in an empire of narrative. And if that empire shows even a single crack, a hint that what you believed was candid might have been choreographed, the fallout is not just personal disappointment, it's a seismic shift in public perception. So, where do we go from here? What does it mean for us, the viewers, when the line between authenticity and performance blurs? It forces us to ask hard questions about the media we consume, the stories we almost take for granted, and the very nature of celebrity in an age of constant surveillance. Are we simply passive viewers, entranced by the spectacle, or do we have the power to demand a deeper, more honest connection to the people who claim to embody truth? Perhaps the real story isn't just about one meticulously staged maternity photo or a singular salacious rumor. It's about the larger ecosystem in which image is currency, trust is fragile, and every moment is contested terrain. As we reflect on this narrative, we're left with a final lingering thought, a thought that resonates long after the screen goes dark. Imagine a world where every carefully constructed public moment is open to question, where even the most intimate celebrations of life are dissected for inconsistencies. In such a world, the line between a heartfelt memory and a masterfully directed performance becomes indistinguishable. And if even one element of that performance is exposed as fabricated, it doesn't simply tarnish a single chapter in a public figure's life. It challenges the entire story, leaving us to wonder what else might be part of this grand illusion. In the end, the story of Meghan Markle's pregnancies, with all its alluring promises and unsettling inconsistencies, serves as a mirror for our own expectations. We crave authenticity, yet we revel in narratives that are too perfectly polished to be real. We demand an intimate window into the lives of the famous, while simultaneously holding them to standards that may be impossible to achieve without a measure of artifice. And so, as we dissect every frame, question every angle, and dwell on every suspicious detail, we begin to understand that in today's media landscape, the truth is as much a performance as the image itself. The final question remains: when you watch a story unfold, are you witnessing genuine emotion? Or are you simply seeing the product of an elaborate design aimed at ensuring every moment counts for the highest engagement? Perhaps in a world of relentless scrutiny and digital detective work, the beauty of a single honest moment is the most valuable and the rarest of all. And so, with one final thought, we invite you to look beyond the surface, question the narrative, and wonder, if a single detail can spark a digital revolution, what else might be hiding behind the carefully curated sheen of celebrity life? This isn't just about a pregnancy a whisper of surrogacy, or even the curated images of a modern royal family. It's a deep dive into the mechanics of trust, the price of perfection, and the inevitable collision between a human desire for authenticity and a world that rewards spectacle. Each carefully chosen frame, every carefully constructed narrative, challenges all of us to discern the truth. In an era where everything is designed to be perfect, even if perfect is, in itself, the greatest deception of all.